Hello, I'm here talking about James W. Fowler, and I actually have his book, Stages of Faith, which is his main claim to fame, which I'm going to be talking about here in a bit. So, who was James? He's an American theologian and religious educator known for developing the theory of faith development through his book, Stages of Faith. He was born in North Carolina. His dad had them moving a lot because he was appointed by a United Methodist bishop to several small churches all around. And so his mom, being also from a family of Quakers, it gave James religious parents and a religious upbringing, which was fine. He finally had settled roots in Lake Junaluska after moving around for so long, which was a great place for him later, as I'll show you, to his development. And he had a big sense of an awareness of social justice, so to speak, because his experiences accompanying his father's services, he was exposed to, for example, the fact that a large portion of people in the prison that his father went to were African American, even though the surrounding area is not mostly African American. And so, because of that, he saw a lot of injustices, but he also saw a lot of good in the world through the lens of religion because he was very compelled to Christ, and devoted himself to religion quite early on in life, very young. And so when he got older in higher education, he went to Duke University, and he got involved in student services or student governance, and he would take a bunch of movements seriously because Arthur Brandenburg would tell him all about how we need to work on the Christian imperative to work for peace and justice. And so Arthur Brandenburg, I think, was a big influence on him and really challenged his ideas and told him like you should take these things seriously. And so because of that, James Fowler would later attend like a lot of rallies, which I'll also mention. And at these schools, he did a whole bunch of different things. I'll also mention. Okay, so the formation of his theology. Oh shit. Oh fuck. Oh god. Okay, so the formation of his theology. So all of these ideas, I believe, were challenging to his preconceived notions for Fowler's, and they really linked the common of everyday life and religion, and so it was practical theology, so to speak. And the first person who did this for him was Lurleen Locklear, which was his wife and the mother of his two kids, and she was really good because she was a Christian educator who was really challenging her husband on his research and what could be connected to faith development for Christian education and ministry. And she helped him in making his theological practices and research connected to the practical realities of church and daily public life and ministry also. After graduating from Duke, James would enroll in Jew University's School of Theology, and while a student there, he would attend Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech at the March on Washington. And James felt this impact really strongly, and he actually had a crisis of thinking, "Oh, am I good enough to? Is my like research or is my education really going to be helping like these people who are? Am I going to be able to help the liberation movements?" And so he dropped a bunch of courses and took a bunch of new ones that related religion to public life. Later on, when he was at Harvard University in the Ethics and Society doctoral program, he would study and write a dissertation based off of Richard Neuber's Ethics and Theology of the Sovereignty of God. And doing that would develop his own theory on faith development theory, especially the conceptualization of universalizing faith, which is his last stage in Stages of Faith, thanks to Neuber's belief on radical monotheistic faith. And then last but not least, we have leading retreats. So during his dissertation research, Fowler went back to Lake Junaluska and he would help 3-week retreats for ministers there, and he would lead them. And so it gave them takeaways by talking to people and then seeing overlapping patterns in what they were saying. And also he would get an opportunity to study more psychological concepts such as Erik Erikson's 8 psychosocial stages of development. And he would use these theories like ego development in tandem with Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development to create his own views on his own theory of faith development. And so what is that theory? Well, it's his magnum opus. It's the thing that he's best known for, even though James did like a ton of other stuff. that's okay. Everything that he did, and even though he was a teacher himself and he taught students, everything I think stems from this book, and these are his main beliefs and what he believes in most strongly, and everything else is like an extension of it, or it's replicating it, or expanding just a tiny bit. And so, Stages of Faith was the book that outlined his framework for individuals developing their faith, which contained 6 stages that these individuals might go through as they evolve their understanding of faith and what the expression of that faith looks like. And so, it was a process that occurred over an individual's lifetime, and it was characterized by their understanding and experience of spirituality. So, it wasn't just like someone is born and then they find out about religion and then boom, they're faithful for their whole life. No, there's actually processes to it, and you can go up stages. You can stay stuck at stages your whole life, which he believed most people stay stuck at stage 3, which was all about like you're stuck in your own bubble and you don't want to acknowledge other people's like boxes of faith and religion and stuff. And you can actually go down too. So it was very cool. It was very his best work, and let's see how it impacted religious education. And it did so in 3 ways, I believe. Psychology and theology combine the two. It talks about individual emphasis and critical reflection, and it impacted pedagogy and curricular planning strongly. That's the wrong slide. Bridging the gap between psychology and theology was totally all James Fowler. All right, he took all of these different theories, like Piaget's constructivism, and he took Neuber's faith approach, and he combined the two in an amazing hodgepodge of like, hey, guess what? It's actually they're not like opposite. It's not like faith saying one thing and psychology saying the other. We can actually use them in tandem with each other and use them to elevate each other and make more sense out of what we're doing. And so he would pave the way, and he would gain a bunch of awards for it. He won the Oscar Pfister Award by the American Psychiatric Association, which is this first quote in Paving the Way on enduring contributions to the dialogue between religion and psychiatry. And he would also receive the William James Award from the American Psychological Association. And he would influence a lot of works afterwards, and even to this day, of course. He would influence like Patricia Snell Herzog, her work on moral and cultural awareness in emerging adulthood, because the great thing about James Fowler was he didn't just focus on children, but stages of faith, because it's a lifelong process. He impacts, he talks about the entirety of a human life. So it's a really good resource for adults, a lot of people find as well, for adult faith work and development. And he would also have people like James Hennessy talk about the faith stages and how they should be explored in terms of specific content. That's from Douglas Herman, who I have cited later on. And so there's people like expanding on his work and using his work for their own work. It's very cool. And so critical reflection and individual emphasis. So fostering curiosity, questions, and self-reflection. That's a key thing that I think Stages of Faith did, and therefore James Fowler did. It talks about environment, like how you need a safe environment where you can question people and be okay with being wrong. And that leads into faith crises, which is, hey, if you're wrong, like you don't have to feel terrible, like everything is the end of the world. It's actually totally normal, and sometimes even a pivotally good thing to question yourself and your own beliefs. I know James Fowler certainly did. And interfaith dialogue was, you start to question yourself, and so you start to approach other people and talk about, what are these different ideas of faith instead of just my own that I'd grown up or just my family had grown up with. And so that leads to challenging your beliefs, and it leads to things like professional development, where we develop programs and even curriculum, which I'll talk about right here, into how do we be better people and develop our faith. And so he provided a framework with his stages of faith on developmental readiness. So it really lets teachers in the classroom and religious educators garner a ton, because it gives them an idea that, hey, students are at certain points in general, students at certain points in their lives need to be shown, for example, in stage 1, they need to be shown symbols and storytelling, because they interpret things differently than we do. Like they're not ready for certain things. They're like a river flowing, but they only see like the top of the river, and they don't understand that there's deeper layers to it. So you have to just show them that there's the top of a river, as you can see on this slide, as there is. And you have to be okay to design your curriculum to be age appropriate that way to their development. And then so you'll tailor your teaching approach specifically to what you find out they are ready for. And that leads into The river symbol that I have to represent the amazingness of James Fowler, which is he actually has in his own book. He talks about river analogy in stage two, which is analogous to describing the flow from the midst of a stream. And he says that about stories and faith. And so, stage two, a person, it could be a child or an adult, does not yet step out on the bank beside the river and reflect on the stories of the flow and their composite meaning. Um, and so what he's saying is like a lot of people, even though they hear the stories about religion, they don't find their expression in the story or the network of narratives or like necessarily related to their own personal experience. Like sometimes they do, but they don't understand that there's deeper meaning, or sometimes it's not like actually set in reality and like a practical thing that these stories are talking about. And maybe they don't gain as much insight. So really, I see this river as like it's connected all the way, and that's why it's been throughout this entire slides, like the river has connected all of James Fowler's ideas and it's connected all of us. And so throughout our whole life, throughout the entirety of our time on this earth, we go through things. And sometimes our river of faith and our journey in spiritual development and everything, we'll have roadblocks. It'll have maybe a dam will show up and completely stop it. And we're so confused we don't know how to proceed. And here you can see that we can't see the end of the horizon of the river, and that's because our journey still has yet to go forward. Um, and so it's okay, and that's what James Fowler tells us is that we have frameworks that we can work with to try to guess, and it's okay to not know, and it's actually good to challenge yourself. And you can just flow like a river, and you can gain multiple different meanings out of it. None of them are necessarily bad or wrong, or one is better than another. It's just for where you are at this point in time. So thank you very much. That's my presentation.